This is a marketing communication. The conversation today is intended only to provide general information. Nothing discussed should be considered financial advice. This is RWA SegMint. This episode is brought to you by SegMint.io, offering the world's best tokenized collectibles.
For any of these games that you're playing, the biggest unlock to me was always just playing and then being able to sell your entire account. You grind in World of Warcraft for months and you finally get to a point where you're like, why am I doing this?
Hey, it's your host, Steven Schill. Today, we got Matty B coming on to talk a little bit about SegMint, but also the fact of ownership. Is that something that people are actually going to care about much more, especially the younger generations, in 2025?
Hi, I'm Matt Bartlett, head of Web3 at VanEck, also CEO of SegMint. SegMint.io should be your home for tokenized collectibles, general NFT marketplace, and more. Come check us out, SegMint.io.
As somebody that has been in crypto for a little bit, going into 2025, we were told from the US that crypto is going to be a big play in 2025. Everybody going into there without the US government saying that kind of thought the same thing, but now we're at a point where the macro conditions have really changed a lot, and I think there was a mass amount of uncertainty at the time that we were having so much technological innovation, or at least it seems so, with so many companies trying to do something in Web3, getting on blockchain rails. Just kind of curious your take right now when you look at the overall market, the crypto sentiment. Do you think that crypto potentially has a chance at not succeeding in 2025?
That's an interesting point, your question. I think the point we're at right now is, we're in the midst of tariff war, and we don't know how long that's going to last and how that's going to eat at our discretionary income. Yeah, we got to be a little cautious to think that some of our fellow degens out there might not have the discretionary income that they once had to devote towards JPEGs and other Web3 investments or assets. Yeah, that one's a little concerning, but I still think that at least in the US, we've got a regime in place now that is very open to crypto and digital assets. And we're seeing all the time, I don't know if there are rulings, but maybe decisions by the SEC related to projects that were maybe once under scrutiny that now are not, right? And so there's sort of a path being painted or provided for us and for some of the innovators in the space to maybe move forward and actually grow and really maybe reach our potential versus what it was 6 months ago and had the regime maybe stayed the same or not went in this direction. I don't know. Things might have been very, very different, at least for me and what we're doing with SegMint, right, in the Web3 space. I'm very happy and certainly satisfied, I think, at this point with what's been going on and the direction of things. Not prices necessarily, but sort of, the actions that are being taken place, the way that people are referring to digital assets in more of a positive light than a negative one. So I think that's a positive overall.
Well, there's a big focus on the podcast here regarding real-world assets, and one thing that I thought was super interesting was pre-orders for the new Nintendo Switch 2, which, for anybody that doesn't know, it's a new video game console and obviously got a lot of interest around it, but they decided they were going to halt pre-orders for that due to the tariff war. With the digital landscape, it feels like they're not affected from it. And I know that the Nintendo Switch 2 is just one component of it, but when we look at the world and thinking, okay, well, shipping physical goods is becoming more expensive, and obviously there's realms where it still goes through, and there's maybe this is only kind of like short-term pain and whatnot, but does this really open up the floodgates in a way for people to go and try to create more digital goods?
I mean, maybe. The Nintendo example is sort of unique because they have some of the world's best gaming IP. So they kind of create their own rules with Mario Brothers and Zelda and other great titles like that. Plus, I'm with most other gamers where we don't really expect some great innovation on the Switch side. It's almost, it's now Pro or Super Pro, whatever it is. I'm not expecting some great change in the hardware itself. But yeah, maybe to your point, it does open up the opportunity for some Web3 projects that are in gaming to really lean into more of the interoperable gameplay and the true ownership of assets.
So you're building a digital marketplace that's also connecting physical assets to it. Maybe a weird question, but how much easier do you think that it is to create a marketplace for digital assets versus physical ones if you had to separate them? And obviously you're looking at one that's combined. How do you look at it?
You use the word easier. Both require a lot of work, so easier probably isn't the right term. eBay isn't worried about which chain to deploy on or which wallet users are going to prefer to sign in with. Digital assets, digitally native assets have more variety, potentially more you could do with them. So I think that makes it maybe more exciting and more important to what you just said. The digital assets can represent physical ones, hence RWAs and the growth in that space.
From physical ownership to digital ownership, I think that ownership as a whole is something that is getting talked about a lot more in 2025. And I think in an odd way, video gamers are starting to realize or see the benefits of actual ownership. And you've been doing a series of Good Morning Matt videos where you give different takes on things. And you kind of touched on this briefly this previous week. As an example, Call of Duty Warzone. This is a game that was around a while ago, but has come back. It's a Battle Royale one of the biggest gaming hits ever. And with it coming back to this original map, it's called Verdansk, there was a lot of complaints that I saw that they weren't bringing back the skins and all of the assets that you bought from the previous game. You're able to replay what you did before, but you don't actually own the things that you purchased many years ago when it first came out. And then I had another friend that was telling me about how their Steam account got banned. And if you're not familiar with Steam, this is a platform where you're able to purchase video games from, $5, $10. Sometimes they're free. Sometimes they're a lot more. But it's something that you can accumulate over time and download on your computer. And they have an account that they quoted at saying it was worth about $10,000 worth of video games on there that if you have the account, you can download. And the fact that they got banned on their account that is supposed to be theirs, they now feel that they've lost $10,000. Similarly to the people that bought the Call of Duty skins in the Warzone game, they now have nothing to show for it. And you realize that you're only renting these things without actually owning. And to give further context to me personally, there was a Call of Duty team called the Dallas Empire, and this is the same as Toronto Blue Jays, New York Yankees, but one of the esport teams for Call of Duty. And back then, when Warzone was around, they actually had in-game models that were made in jerseys, essentially, for that team. So I can't use it in the current version of the new game that they have, and I don't have any access to it, where arguably we could say that that is a digital good that is rare. At least I think that is rare. Vintage, you could show it off. There's a collectability aspect to it, but there's nothing that I have except for a receipt and an email somewhere. And then to take it a step further, I keep seeing online, maybe this is wrong. I feel that it's right, though. There's a lot of young people thinking, well, I'm never going to own a house. And so maybe they won't own a house, hypothetically, but what if they're able to own other things that they have in a digital environment? I just really think that the ownership situation, I don't know if that's the right term, but ownership as a whole is going to really start to matter in 2025. So do you think people care about ownership?
I mean, you just made a terrific case for NFTs. I mean, all the problems that you just mentioned. But yeah, I think maybe breaking it down into two parts. First, to address the gaming skin issue, and then on to ownership. Personally, I've never been a big fan of skins. I get why people buy them, right, for the flex, or maybe they do offer some sort of specific in-game utility. A lot of people have made money on CSGO skins. I totally understand. I played Modern Warfare myself, and I would pay for upgrades that, yeah, they might come with skins. The character might look different, but I usually did it because I wanted a better weapon in general. Like, nothing was worse than starting off with the German Carabiner 98K bolt action single shot, where it took forever to load. It's not semi-automatic. It basically equaled no fun. And so you either needed to grind with that rifle till you got something semi-automatic, or you had to pay. Well, paying to upgrade meant paying to upgrade the fun. So I think where it sticks out to me bigger than skins is for any of these games that you're playing. The biggest unlock to me was always just playing and then being able to sell your entire account. You grind in World of Warcraft for months, and you finally get to a point where you're like, why am I doing this? I'm not able to sell it legally. If I did, I could get banned, for violating terms of use. My own kids play a mobile game called Cookie Run Kingdom, and we give them $10 to $20 a month to buy more cookies or whatever gems that they need. And so I try to explain to them, like, wouldn't it be cool if you could take that cookie character and now bring it over into your new game? And that's what an NFT could do. And that's really like more true ownership. So to me, that's a big unlock. And obviously there are projects that you and I are very familiar with that are sort of building this open ecosystem, this metaverse-like experience that supports true interoperability. So I think that's coming. Going back to your point about ownership, when you're in an inflationary environment like we've been in over the last few years, unless you own assets, you lose ground. And meaning, unless you already owned real estate and stocks that went up in value, your wages generally stayed the same. And so you start to feel like things become more and more out of reach. And so it's one of the reasons why our generation or around, I think, loves Bitcoin, for example, because it has this great correlation to M2 money supply or inflation. So you feel like you're at least keeping your store of value to a degree. I know it's volatile, but that's sort of the idea. But yeah, I think renting is likely for most, is it true ownership? Maybe. And maybe that's why the generation that we have leans into digital assets more than anything else. Yeah, I don't know if renting will work. I don't know if having it in your wallet for a set time is going to make a difference. But certainly I'd rather rent the skin versus pay the full price for it if that was more cost effective.
Well, you'd also think that the companies could make more money if they ended up renting these things at a lower cost, because people do generally only play certain games for X amount of months and then move on to the new hot thing. But we've talked a lot about renting, and I had a thought about a library. How do you give people the sense of ownership without actually owning it? And would you think that it would work if there was a library in Web3 where you could hold an asset in your wallet and it being the right thing? You can't sell it or trade it. I don't know how that would work on a contract level, but to give you that sense of ownership to see if you feel anything. Because I remember a couple of weeks ago, you showed me some of the graded comics that you purchased. And I was thinking the other day, I was like, those comics are really, really cool. I'm curious if now that he has them, if he's like, yeah, that was a cool purchase, or if you're like, it's kind of cool, but it's already lost its flavor after a week. So do you think that the library concept of renting assets for a short while to allow people to test drive them or see what ownership feels like would work, or that's a stupid idea?
No, I mean, well, first of all, I bought, and just for the comics in question, these are not digital comics; these are physical ones that are graded. No, I don't love them all, and I purchased these mainly for promotional purposes for SegMint. There's still a couple though that I'm going to keep, and when I look at the artwork, and I mentioned this, when I look at the sort of advertisement on the back, whether it's for Legos or something else from when I was a kid, it gives you that nice, fun, nostalgic feeling. So I do enjoy them. I don't know if the digital version would have the same effect. It might. I think it comes back to the other problem with NFTs or that they've had in the past, which are, what's the real utility? Am I just looking at a picture? Now, we've been talking a lot about gaming. Okay, it's gaming. I get to rent the spaceship for whatever game, or I get to rent that really cool rifle skin from you, or right. I mean, that could happen, and I'm pretty sure that's already happening, right? If not, it will be. I mean, that seems to make a lot of sense to me. It's just the game makers, the different projects need to make them so that they're interoperable. I mean, that's always been the key issue.
I mean, interoperability is an interesting point, because we say, oh, it would be awesome to have maybe that Call of Duty skin in a different game, in theory, as we're talking here, but also, how does that work? Does it completely kill the vibe of certain worlds, or do you need to change the texture of everything to match that specific world? And so curious how things go moving forward. But it is a time where there's a huge emphasis on video games as, again, they're counter-recessionary, and the fact that blockchain is getting integrated in everything with this AI wave. We have AI gaming that's starting to come up and be more popular, but for you yourself with building out SegMint, which is a platform for real world assets, but also for these digital ones, you did a mint that was on Abstract, and it was kind of a way for you to form a community. Did you look at that as doing a mint for free on the aspect of just forming that initial community, or what was the desire behind doing a mint in general?
We've been building SegMint now for a little around maybe 2 years or so. And, we had this mentality that, if you build it, they will come. And really, it's an antiquated way of thinking. And so when you're thinking about an NFT mint, for us, that's not the project. It's core to what we're doing. But it really was meant to be a community building strategy, have a big splash on abstract because that's where we're devoting a lot of resources. I wasn't trying to or not trying to raise capital to fund another 10,000 NFT collection, right? It's just to get people interested, excited, feeling that it's fun and that they belong. And so yeah, definitely leaning into it for the community benefits. And so now we have the best problem. Instead of trying to find community, after we've already built a product, we have community and they're eager to consume what we're building. And so I think that's the best problem to have, because now heads are down and we're trying to deliver to that.
And you guys have had a few different updates from a wider marketplace viewer, if you will, to see what some of the top collections are. You guys have the abstract, I should say, SegMint adventures, even though they're on abstract, but the evolution of those characters. You guys are working on a collector score system. You guys are having a fishing game coming out. Give me a quick update on all the goods.
Yeah, marketplace should be live on the 11th of April. Beginning of May, we'll bring out the fishing game, and that's going to be tied to hopefully an abstract badge claim. So users on abstract have been trying to collect these badges and accrue XP for maybe a token claim on abstract. Some of the different applications have seen users anywhere from 50 to 150,000 people come in and try these apps in order to earn the badge. Ours is really meant to be quite fun. Our fishing game is more of like a cashback incentive program where you use the platform, you accrue XP, you buy bait, you go fish, you win a prize. And in most cases, our activation will just be really around marketplace awareness so that people know what SegMint is. We joke about it, but when we did this free NFT mint, about a third of the community thought SegMint was a game. They're like, win game. When are we going to be playing this thing? Yeah, it's a marketplace platform with many gamification elements, and that's really going to continue. But that's some of what to look forward to.
So one of the things initially with NFTs when they came out was the aspect of a company is able to reward people that are very loyal to the Aeroplan cards or MasterCard points for using that. And that was one of the early renditions or thoughts around it. I think that is still the case. And for you specifically with the adventurers, you're coming out with this collector score and you're able to earn XP right now for engaging with different activity. But the idea is it to reward holders for using the platform, or how do you kind of view your NFT integration specifically?
Yeah, you have the NFT collection, and you have, which is really the fun, the gamified element of SegMint, or the beginnings of it. And then you have the marketplace, which is really more of like the business, right? And so we need these two elements to converge at some point. And so what I mean by that is we need the users, we need this new found group of engaged users to use the platform, right? So that we could find market fit. And so we'll be bringing at some point something called a collector score, where the collector score is a culmination of really the collectibles that you own, the adventures that you own. We're going to unveil a new adventurer item collection, so that will make up some of the prizes that you could win when you go fishing. But it's all to make SegMint very collector centric, right? I mean, we want to aim the product to the collector, and it could be of many different types of items, but we're rewarding things like owning a full set or more than one full set or doubles or items of different rarity. That will all get reflected in the collector score, which will probably come in June. And that, if we find product market fit with a marketplace and what we want to do after, would sort of indicate a potential token claim if we do a SegMint utility token. But that's sort of where we're headed. And that's sort of why you're going to see, the adventurer play this very key role. I still speak to it as like the premier collectible on SegMint's platform, because it is. And, when we do different drops, when we do fun activations, that all will go, or at least at the start, to those holding the adventure NFTs.
And when you originally started SegMint, abstract wasn't even a thing, but it does feel like there is much more of a focus on abstract. So is your hope to make SegMint a home for abstract NFTs, or continue to have kind of an open and broader market?
Yeah, I mean, when we launched SegMint, we launched on Ethereum. This is over a year ago, and this was the day after Blast had a migration that made the gas prices go through the roof. So it was $100 to do any sort of transaction. So we quickly pivoted to Polygon, which was also low cost and had some decent collections. We then added Base because some of our RWA partners wanted to deploy on Base, but we never really found traction on either of those chains. And so when it came to Abstract, it has this consumer crypto focus. It has people that, we say vibing, but they're really vibing. They're really enjoying the applications. There's a ton of people streaming now daily that I see constantly on my X account. And what you are going to see with SegMint is Abstract will be front and center, so that when you go to the marketplace, the collections that you're going to take note of first will be those on Abstract. Yeah, we'll still continue to support collections on those other chains, but I just think Abstract is probably where the future is, at least on the consumer crypto side. And just to add on to that, it's important to have a chain that is low cost, like low in terms of your transaction fees, but you also have this ecosystem of projects that are all working together to sort of go after the consumer. And I've said this many times, I don't think any of us have it perfectly figured out yet, but when you know that thousands of projects are all sort of working with the same goal in mind, sooner or later, someone's going to have a great innovation that we could all benefit from, right? And so that's going to be a win-win for the ecosystem as a whole.
And so I can imagine you've gone through a lot of trials and tribulations, but what's something you believed when you started this project that turned out to be completely wrong?
Well, I think, when we launched SegMint, it launched as a fractionalization platform. And so, going back, not having really done this before, I was focused on building the product first and then community. That was a mistake, right? And so that took a lot of time away from activities we should have been doing. I did think eventually we would get the fractionalization approved in Europe. We eventually opened up SegMint under VanEck Europe as SegMint GmbH, but it looks like there's just still too many headwinds there, and we struggled to find market fit. Just the idea that the users have to be KYC'd, users have to live outside the US. That in combination with sort of declining prices of digitally native NFTs. Wow, sort of a perfect storm for, a niche business like a fractionalization platform of NFTs to not make it. And so that's why we made a decision late last year to pivot towards more of a general marketplace feel. And while fractionalization will hope to get that approved at some point in the US, it's not the core feature, right? And so we're going to focus on things like first, maybe competing with OpenSea Magic Eden, right? Trying to give them a run for their money. But then also some novel ideas around tokenization, specifically supporting sort of the self-custody side of tokenized collectibles, where, a Steve Schiller could tokenize his Marvel comic trading card, but it stays in his possession. And so what would the logistics around that look like? And maybe really become that eBay of Web3, which would be a lot of fun. It's ambitious. I've said that many times, but that could be a worthwhile challenge, and so far we're accepting it.
Well, it feels like everything in Web3 needs to be ambitious because it is trying to disrupt every single industry. So with that being said, what part of running an NFT project do you think people completely underestimate?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. First of all, and I've mentioned this in the past, being that SegMint's backed by VanEck, very fortunate to have funding, right? Not every NFT project has that, and it is why many NFT projects or just Web3 projects in general start with a paid NFT, right? Because they're looking to raise capital, raise some funds to fund whatever it is that they're going to build, whether that's a game or a metaverse or whatever it is. I'm fortunate enough to not have that. It's a little easier now because you're not with the new regime. You're not so worried that you're going to leave in handcuffs because you had some sort of NFT project that might not be kosher with the regulatory side of things. But I think again we're getting more advice, guidance on that going forward, which is a big plus.
Matt, if people are listening to this and they like what you have to say, what's the best way for them to follow you and what SegMint's doing?
Well, I really appreciate it when people follow me on X.com. It's at Matt Bartlett VE. I'm also on LinkedIn. I try to do posts quite often. You'll see my recent GM Matt videos. So trying to hit on topical things like tokenized collectibles or general market sentiment. So go ahead and tune in. Otherwise, jump into the SegMint Discord and and see what we're doing. Maybe you can be one of the early future fishing game participants. So hope to see you there.
This is marketing communication. The information contained in this document is intended only to provide general information. It shall not be construed as promotion of a specific product, nor as legal or tax advice. SegMint assumes no liability with regards to any decision taken on the basis of this information. Information contained herein is current as of the publication date and subject to change. Certain statements contained herein may constitute projections, forecasts, and other forward-looking statements which do not reflect actual results. Information provided by third-party sources is believed to be reliable and have not been independently verified for accuracy or completeness and cannot be guaranteed. SegMint content may link to third-party content for convenience purposes, and this does not represent adoption, endorsement, approval, or verification of such content by SegMint. All information is based on historic data and does not predict future developments. Using SegMint is subject to risk, including the possible loss of access to your digital assets, money, NFTs, and information. Digital assets involve a high degree of risk. If you buy a digital asset or NFT, you may not be able to sell it, and if you sell it, you might not get your purchase price back anymore. It is possible to lose the entire money paid for minting, buying, and fragmenting digital assets and/or NFTs. No part of this material may be reproduced in any form or referred to in any other publication without express written permission of SegMint.